Society talks about being mature like it's some badge you earn with age, like the candles on your birthday cake automatically make you wiser, more grounded, more balanced. But the truth is, maturity doesn't just come with years, it comes with discipline. And one of the first places that discipline shows up is in how you handle your emotions. Maturity is not about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about knowing exactly what you feel, but not letting it sit in the driver's seat. You ever been in a moment where anger tried to speak before wisdom could walk in? When offense showed up first, loud and hot, and you had to choose whether to clap back or calm down? That's where maturity gets tested. See, maturity knows that emotions are real, but they're not always right. And they definitely don't always deserve the mic. People think strength is about pushing your feelings down like they don't matter. That's not strength. That's suppression. That's stuffing a wound and calling it healed. But maturity doesn't hide feelings under the rug. It lays them out, names them, surrenders them to God, and decides what to do next based on truth, not just triggers. I had to learn that I could feel anger and still choose peace. I could feel sadness and still stand strong. I could feel anxiety and not let it paralyze me. That's the difference between being ruled and being responsible. Emotions are indicators, not dictators. They let you know something's happening, but they're not supposed to take control and drive your decisions. The immature version of you might have snapped back, thrown shade, maybe even burned a bridge just to prove a point. But the grown version, the healed version, the walking in purpose version, that version knows better. That version can pause, process, and pick the right response, not just the loud one. And don't let this world trick you into thinking that emotional outbursts are a sign of being real or unfiltered. Maturity isn't about being unfiltered. It's about being intentional. You can be honest without being reckless. You can speak truth without tearing people down. And you can feel deeply without falling apart. Now, don't get me wrong. There will still be moments when emotions hit hard. And they don't ask for permission. They come like a wave. But maturity means you don't drown in them. You let them rise, and then you let them pass. You don't build your whole identity around what you felt in one heated moment. You step back, breathe, pray, and ask, what's really going on here? Because sometimes what looks like rage is actually hurt. Sometimes what feels like anger is actually fear. And sometimes what sounds like disrespect is actually a cry for connection. You grow when you stop reacting to everything that stirs you. You grow when you learn to sit with your emotions without letting them own you. That's where the power is. That's when maturity becomes more than a concept, it becomes your character. So the next time emotion tries to push you out of your peace, remember this: feeling it doesn't make you weak, but following it blindly just might. You were never meant to be led by your feelings. You were meant to lead them. Control doesn't come from being emotionless. It comes from being rooted. We live in a world that loves shortcuts. Everybody wants to grow fast, rise quickly, be recognized early. But real maturity, it doesn't rush. It builds slowly, quietly, day by day, decision by decision. Maturity understands that consistency matters more than hype. It's not about having one good day, it's about showing up again and again, when nobody claps, when no one sees, when it doesn't feel exciting or inspirational. That's the kind of growth that lasts. You know what's easy? Making promises in January and forgetting them by February. What's easy is being excited for a few days, then quitting when it gets hard. But maturity says, no, I'm going to be faithful, even when I don't feel it. See, consistency is not about perfection. It's about commitment. It's about deciding who you want to be and making choices every day that line up with that vision, even when emotions There's something powerful about the person who chooses to plant deep instead of just chasing the next spotlight. That person may not be loud, may not trend, may not go viral, but they endure. And in a world full of people burning out and switching paths every few months, endurance is rare. That's what maturity looks like. It shows up for the process. Growth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes you're changing in places people can't even see yet. Your mindset, your attitude, your boundaries. You're learning to think before reacting, to forgive before being asked, to let go before bitterness builds. That's internal work. Consistency is what keeps you grounded when life gets chaotic. You may not control what hits you, but you can control how you respond. You may not get instant results, but if you stay consistent, you will get transformation. Think about a seed. It doesn't sprout the moment you plant it. It goes into the dirt, it gets buried, it gets watered, and all that growth starts underneath the surface where no one can see it. This is what happens when you choose consistency. You grow roots. You become stable. And that's the kind of maturity that can handle pressure. Because a tree with deep roots doesn't fall over when the wind blows. It bends, but it doesn't break. It might lose some leaves, but it doesn't lose its identity. That's what happens when you keep showing up in prayer, when you keep making wise decisions, when you keep forgiving, keep healing, keep obeying, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when it's not popular. People will look at the fruit and applaud, but God looks at the root and says that's where the real strength is. Because he knows that anybody can perform for a moment, but not everybody can endure through a season. That's what maturity understands. It's not about speed, it's about faithfulness. So if you feel like you're growing slow, like nobody sees the work you're doing on the inside, like your process is taking too long, don't be discouraged. Keep going, keep building, keep watering what God planted in you, because maturity isn't measured in moments, it's measured in movement. Slow, steady, faithful movement toward who you were always meant to become. Keep walking. That's where your strength is. You ever notice how hard it is to admit you're wrong? How something in us resists correction, even when we know deep down it's the truth? That resistance is pride, and pride will keep you stuck in cycles you were meant to break. Pride will have you defending dysfunction just so you don't have to say, I need to change. But maturity, it humbles itself. It listens, learns. It owns its part in the mess without trying to control the outcome. See, when you begin to mature, you realize that being right isn't more important than being whole. You start valuing growth over ego, and you stop seeing correction as an attack and start seeing it as protection. That shift in perspective, it's necessary, because the people who grow the most aren't the ones who always have the answers. They're the ones who are willing to be taught. Correction is not rejection, it's redirection. And it takes real strength to be honest with yourself and say, I've got some things in me that need to change. Maybe it's the way you speak when you're angry. Maybe it's the way you shut down when someone gets too close. Maybe it's the way you always have to be in control because you don't trust anyone to take care of you. Whatever it is, maturity says, I'm not going to keep excusing this. I'm going to let God confront it. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you stop running from what you need to face. When you let God bring correction, not to shame you, but to shape you. When you let people speak truth into your life, not because they're perfect, but because they see what you can't. That's what humility does. It doesn't get defensive. It listens, and then it goes back and does the hard work of change. You know what's exhausting? Pretending you're okay when you're not. carrying pride like a shield when all it's really doing is keeping help away. But when you're humble, you don't have to pretend. You can admit, I'm still healing, I still mess up, or I don't have it all figured out. And instead of people losing respect for you, they actually draw closer. Because authenticity is magnetic. Pride pushes people away, but humility builds bridges. Now, let me be real. Humility will cost you. It'll cost you your right to be right. It'll cost you your image. It'll cost you the comfort of blame. But what you gain is worth far more: peace, healing, clarity, and stronger relationships. You stop looking at everyone else as the problem and start asking, what in me needs to shift? And when you start living like that, life opens up in new ways. You begin to see patterns for what they are, not just as external battles, but as internal invitations to grow. This is the quiet work of maturity. Not loud, not flashy, but deeply transformative. It's when you don't just hear truth, you apply it. You don't just talk about change, you walk in it. And every time you do that, your character grows, your heart softens, and your life starts to align with who you were really meant to be. Let humility do its work in you, because that's the path to real freedom. You know what real maturity looks like? It looks like discipline when no one's watching. It looks like showing up when you don't feel like it, honoring your word even when it costs you something. It's not about being perfect or having it all together. It's about being consistent. Maturity is when your intentions stop just living in your head and start showing up in your behavior. You don't just dream about growth, you do what it takes to grow. You don't just talk about healing, you commit to the process, even when it's slow and uncomfortable. One of the biggest signs that you're maturing is when you stop being driven by your feelings and start being led by your convictions. Because feelings are real, but they're not always true. They're not always stable. You can feel tired and still be called. You can feel overlooked and still be valuable. You can feel unworthy and still be chosen. If you let your emotions lead, they'll take you places your purpose never called you to go. But when you walk in discipline, when you decide, I'm going to do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing, that's when you really start to build something that lasts. See, a lot of people want breakthrough, but they don't want the boundaries that create it. They want the fruit, but they don't want the pruning. But maturity says, I'll do what needs to be done, even if it doesn't feel good in the moment. Whether that's waking up early to pray, apologizing first, even when your pride is screaming, or cutting off distractions that are slowing you down, mature people don't wait for motivation. They move from commitment. This world teaches us to chase what's convenient, but the path to growth, it's narrow. It's disciplined, and it's often lonely. You may have to make decisions that others don't understand. You may have to let go of environments that no longer reflect where you're going. Maturity means you stop letting your environment shape your character and start letting your character shape your environment. That takes strength. It takes resolve. It takes faith. Sometimes we sabotage what we're building because we're so used to chaos that consistency feels boring. We want fire, but forget that God also works in the stillness. That some of your greatest transformation will happen not in the big emotional highs, but in the quiet moments where you choose to stay faithful, to keep going, to keep believing. Maturity understands that success isn't built in a day, it's built daily. In the small choices, in the silent victories, in the moments when no one claps, but you show up anyway. You can't keep asking God to elevate you if you're not willing to establish the habits that can sustain you. Gifts can get you in the room, but character keeps you there. And character is built in discipline. You want to lead? Serve. You want influence? Be consistent. You want fruit? Stay planted. Stop quitting every time it gets hard. Stop expecting harvest from seeds you haven't watered. If you want to be mature, you've got to get comfortable with process. You've got to understand that discipline isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's what aligns you with purpose and steadies you when storms come, because storms will come. But when you've built your life on discipline, on obedience, on faith, you don't crumble. You stand. Keep showing up, even when it's hard. That's where maturity lives.